I still remember 3 years ago sharing the sob story of me crying as I matched into cardiology fellowship. Well, as the making of this video, I'm officially a PGY6, or a fancy way of saying my final year of cardiology fellowship and my final year of formal training ever. Which means at this time next year, I will be a fully independent cardiology attending, no more residency or fellowship in the site. This is it, which is like absolutely crazy. So in this episode, I wanted to just do a very deep, raw intake on everything. My plans for the future, including applying for jobs, what that looks like, showing you guys some insights of what my third year schedule looks like comparatively to my past few years in fellowship. Also give you guys some ideas of just reflections that I've had now being 2 years down the line. I'll also be sharing some reflections and advice for any of you guys who are on the medical journey, even if you want to do cardiology fellowship or anything that just requires a lot of time. And then finally, I'm going to share my favorite parts of this experience and what I'm most excited about. So let's get into it. Now, before I talk about my future plans, I think it's helpful for anyone to just get context of how many years it's took to get to this phase thus far. So to be where I am currently, which is a third year cardiology fellow, I went to 3 years of undergrad and finished my school 1 year early. I took 1 year off to work while I was applying to medical school. I did 4 years of medical school, 3 years of internal medicine residency. I worked 1 year as a hospitalist while I was applying to cardiology fellowship. And now I've done 2 years, now will be 3 years of cardiology fellowship. I'm pretty sure if the math adds up, that's like 15 years of training outside of high school. And for more context, later this year, I will be 32, which means around the time that I'm starting to begin my first big boy job as a cardiologist, I'll be 33. So definitely a lot of schooling. Practically half of my life has been on this pursuit of becoming and attending, and I'll share those insights later. But first I wanted to start with just future plans that I have and what it looks like applying for a job as a cardiology fellow. Now, as I've talked about in prior videos of my fellowship journey, if you guys are interested, there's probably a playlist or something that I'll link down below, but I essentially will be doing general or non-invasive cardiology. That is a fancy way of saying that I will not be putting stents into people in the middle of the night when they have a heart attack. I won't be putting pacemakers in people, and essentially I won't be doing extra years to do a procedural cardiology specialty, which I knew earlier on I wasn't that interested in, and it's kind of been the right mark the entire time. So now on the other side, being a non-invasive cardiologist can mean a lot of different things. It basically means that you don't do procedures really during your day-to-day, but you can have a lot of different areas of expertise. Some people are experts in microvascular disease, some people are experts in prevention, some people are experts in hypertrophic cardiomyopathy. Like, you pick your disease that you may want to take care of more, or you can be somebody who's like truly a general cardiologist and just sees everything and completely okay with that. For me, I'm going to be a combination of that general cardiologist with a strong focus on imaging, which means I know how to use imaging such as cardiac echo, transesophageal echo, CT, nuclear imaging, and more to be able to better diagnose cardiac diseases, which means that whatever group that I'll end up working for, I'll bring these skills to the table, and ideally their partners and my future colleagues and other doctors around the hospital will say, hey, you're the CT guy or you're the echo guy. Can you read this for me? Can you explain this to me? Can you tell me how we better manage this patients with other imaging modalities? That's going to be part of my role in addition to taking care of just general cardiology problems. And that's pretty much how I've tailored my training for my first 2 years, where I've just developed this kind of imaging kind of fold in the background. And as you'll see in my schedule in a second, my third year is very imaging heavy because I really just want to have an asset on the table where I can say, first of all, I'm a good doctor. 2, I bring a lot of experience from all the general cardiology aspects, but in addition, I also have this imaging expertise, which I can bring to the table and help out any group that I join. That is kind of the job that I'm looking for, a non-invasive cardiology job, and ideally bringing my imaging expertise to the table so the future group can use it as an asset. Now, in terms of applying for those jobs, where I live in Texas, my family is from here, and thus my hope is to stay around the area. And that means I have to be more selective in terms of the hospital systems and groups, etc. But thankfully, Texas is a big enough state. Even the cities have like greater suburbs around it that you can find larger and larger groups the further you're willing to look out. And that's kind of started that process. 1, just updated my resume about like a week ago, had AI make sure that it looked nice and pretty, and made some suggestions that then I implemented and ideally now have a usable resume. And then 2, I kind of sent out some feelers for major groups that I want to consider at least being interviewed by to start the process. And I won't give too much details into this, but I kind of have an idea of where I'll ultimately end up. And that just comes from having softer discussions in the background while you're going through training. And as you guys will realize, the further you go into this experience, most job hunting is rarely through Indeed.com or findajob.com or hiremei'madoctor.com. I'm sure that exists. Or those Doximity jobs. Most of them are going through your network and saying, I want a job here. Who do you know? Can you help me get in touch? Can you make an introduction? And then that kind of builds on connections. Even when I was applying for hospitalist, I had a cousin who's a physician in the city that I was a hospitalist in, and he referred me to 3 or 4 people that he knew that were in medicine groups, and they sent me talking to their recruiter, and just kind of build this network where I got all the interviews from all those groups, despite not knowing anyone in the hospitalist field at that area. And that's really how job hunting is going to happen in cardiology too. You just find somebody who knows somebody that may have the contact of the person you're ultimately looking for, and then they tell you, do you have an opening or not? So I've applied to groups, or I've sent out my CVs to groups who have told me, at least for the time being, and keep in mind, I still have another year until I start. We don't have any openings in this specific area, but we'll keep your CV in case we do, and let's just keep touching base. That's perfectly fine. That's what the job hunting part looks like. My time frame is ideally in the next 6 months or by the end of 2025 to have a fairly clear, meaning line or signature on the line contract done, but that doesn't happen. Most fellows are still kind of potentially working in the early spring to kind of figure out their final job opportunities. I'd just like to get that part taken care of. I want to just have the monkey off my back, have some clarity, and then also be able to tailor my last part of training to say, this is the job I'm going to do. This is what they want me to do more of. Let me make sure I use my training to enhance that. But that's the exciting part. I don't know how much I'm going to document on the channel about me necessarily applying for jobs, because I feel like it's going to be pretty uninteresting, but I will try to give routine updates, especially again, because things are in the background and they're hopefully in the works and making some progress. But in case they don't, I don't want to overspeak, and so we'll see. But I'm really excited and really excited to share with you guys ultimately where I end up. So in addition to future plans for applying for jobs, I also have to take all of the tests to prove that I know what the hell I'm doing. Just like you did in medical school of taking boards to prove that you knew how to be a doctor, at least on a multiple choice exam, and internal medicine residency, you had to take internal medicine boards after I graduated. Cardiology, you have to do the same. But unfortunately, in this field of cardiology, probably comparatively to most specialties, I have to take a significant amount of boards. I'm just going to count them out. Cardiology boards, done. I'm going to be boarded in echo. That's another test. I'm going to be nuclear cardiology boarded. That essentially means I can read stress tests and other nuclear scans. That's one. And then CT boards. So right now, that's 4. In the future, I may choose to take more, but each of those comes with like a $1,200 plus price tag, not even including the count or the cost of the resources. And keep in mind, I'm still a fellow on a fellow salary, trying to make ends meet and making sure that the budget is tight as possible, and then adding essentially like 4, so so much as like $5,000 in just testing fees is like insane. Probably more moonlighting is going to need to be necessary, but in terms of timing, I'll have 2 board exams that I'll take at the end of this year, anywhere between September, October, all the way to December. That's going to be my CT and my nuke boards. My echo boards will be around this time next year. You can choose to take them around your 2nd or 3rd year. I'm going to be waiting until essentially I graduate. I'll be taking them in July of 2026. And then my cardiology boards will be taken at the latter part of 2026. So probably at the time that I'm starting my job. Some people start their job and then they sit for their board exam and they ideally pass it. And that one's supposed to be pretty much a beast. And so a lot of studying is going to happen between now and next year, but which I'm excited about, and I'll share that in a second. But even before talking about some advice and reflections, I want to share with you guys my 3rd year schedule, which is freaking awesome. So I took a screenshot, as I've done every year now, of Cardiology Fellowship. And if you haven't seen my past schedules, I will link down below, again, the playlist or the videos of my life as a cardiology fellow. I've taken the names off, obviously, of my co-fellows, but just for reference, this one right here is going to be me, and you can get an idea. But these are our first years, and they do pretty much all of the core rotations. They'll do consults, they'll do ultrasounds or echoes, they'll do nuke months, they'll do ICUs, they do EP, and they kind of rotate. There's less flexibility in their schedule because you have to kind of get the necessary practice and repetitions before you kind of get into more flexibility. The second years, as you see, have some more white spots, and that's where they can choose like what specialties and things that they want to do. We even had a fellow last year who went abroad and did cardiology there at clinic and hospital, which they were really interested in, had a great experience. They went for a few weeks. So lots of flexibility, just depends on your program. But we're going to focus on me because that's who the video is about. But also don't want to hit too much on my co-fellows. So again, my whole focus is going to be on imaging, and there's going to be flexibility even within the schedule, or I'm going to be able to say, hey, I want to switch some of these white things up for different things. But nuke, again, is being able to read stress tests. So I have about 1.5 months of those. I have some time for CT. Structural echo is essentially where I'm going to be doing things like TEs on procedures or with procedures. So imagine patients who are getting things like MitraClips, TriClips, people who are getting Watchman or left appendage occlusion devices, and then other modalities that we use TEs for. And then reading the echoes for patients who are getting TAVRs and valve replacement specimens. And so really working with our team that uses a lot of structural imaging, this is a really high yield learning month for me. I've done one as a second year, and I'll get to do two, and I'll potentially even consider seeing if I can add another one just to be really robust in this element and aspect of care. CHF is congestive heart failure. It's a consult month where you're seeing patients as a consultant. And then I will have a later point an MRI month, which I'm really excited for because I've used MRI loosely, but not for actual diagnosis, but more from a research perspective. And now having time to formally learn how to read them will be good. Some fellowships will do more MRI earlier on, so people will actually be able to be boarded for MRI as well. It's not necessarily an area of my interest at the moment, and so I'm okay with having less, but you can if you do need it. And then I will be doing a congenital month, actually be doing two, where I'm going to be doing a month at the local children's hospital, which has a really robust cardiology program, but then also coming back and just doing ultrasounds and TEs and whatever procedures they may do. I'm getting really good at congenital echo, because again, that's going to be a level of expertise I want to bring back to the table. So the white parts are kind of me setting things up. And so again, I've kind of said, oh, maybe I want to come back and do another month of CT for a month, or maybe I want to just follow the surgery team around and seeing like bypasses and procedures and seeing if I can do the TEs with anesthesiologists. RPVI is like a vascular imaging, so I think about like lower extremity Dopplers and things like that. And I may choose to adjust these depending on my needs, etc. But I'm really looking forward to the amount of flexibility that is in the schedule. Now, in addition to the schedule, let's talk about call schedule. So the biggest bonus of pretty much every fellowship is that the further you go into your training, the less call that you end up doing. We have a relatively small fellowship. We have 9 towards the entire program, and some fellowships programs, for example, have 9 in one class. And that just depends on the size of the program and what you can kind of allocate to. Bigger hospital systems will have more fellows because often they become fellow dependent. My hospital system's a little bit different, but I actually like the smaller size. But on the flip side of having smaller fellows, that means more predictable call. We do 1 call a week in the ICU overnight just because they want somebody in-house for the sicker patients. And so for the past 2 years, every single week, anywhere from Monday to Sunday, sometimes twice a week, but rarely, I've been on call once a week. And it has been a normalcy now, but it has not been anything I've enjoyed. I'd rather be home every single evening with my family as I could be. And as a third year, that'll be more predictable. My average amount of calls will probably drop to like 1.5 to 2. There'll be some months where I'm on call, like this coming month of July, I'll be on call like 3 or 4 times just because the new fellows are still getting accustomed to things and maybe not quite ready for call just yet in the ICUs with really sick patients. And then following month, I may be on call once or no. There's some months where I have like no call, which is awesome. And so it just varies depending on when people are taking vacations. So you can imagine Thanksgiving, Christmas, where a lot of people want to be back home. Those may be months where I'm helping fill in for those fellows being gone. But otherwise, the first years and the second years are kind of taking the majority of the calls, and then we're kind of plugging in where needed, which I'm really excited about. Now, those are really cool updates, but lastly, to end off, I want to make this practical to you, and I really want to just always use, as I have done, use this channel as like a form of journaling, but ideally helps anyone that is going to be in my shoes one day, whether it's cardiology fellowship or something that just takes a lot of time. And so advice and some reflection now going at least 2 years down the journey. Advice less reflection number 1 is that the further you go into the journey, the less you focus on the time spent and the more you focus on getting the right outcome. I think this is like the best way I've been able to summarize this, because there's always this concern, or at least focus of like, oh, that's like 3 more years. Like if I do this, that's like 2 years plus this, I'll be like this old when I do it. And like I remember accounting how old I would be when I'd graduate fellowship or residency and all those things, and I thought they mattered, and to some extent they do. If you followed me enough in this channel, you knew I was a hospitalist for a year, and strategically I did that because if I knew that I liked that job enough, I would have just like withdrawn my fellowship applications. If I thought I could be an internal medicine hospitalist for the entirety of my career and life, I would have been okay. But within 2 to 3 months, I got bored, and I talked about all the different reasons why I left hospitalist medicine. Now, frankly, I'll be talking about more because I've like developed more reflections on that from my former colleagues. But because I realized that that endpoint was not for me, then I was okay with doing 3 more years of training, and potentially even more if I decided I needed to like do like a procedural specialty. I knew I didn't want to be bored going to work. That would have been like the worst thing ever, to spend all these years and say, you know, like, my job's okay. But as a cardiologist, like I love being a fellow. I love being in ICU, managing sick patients, and like seeing somebody who was like the brinks of death, like literally, and you are the person that everyone is looking at. It's like, what's next? What are we doing? And then you like finish your call night and that patient is doing better, and then a week later they're like out of the ICU, you're like, hell yeah, I did that. That doesn't always happen for me, at least as a hospitalist. I didn't get that same feeling. And so I needed that extra step. And so long story short, the long journey hasn't really mattered as much, more than I realized, particularly for my hospitalist year, that I wanted the right outcome, which is I wanted the job that I enjoyed going to, paid well for the amount of time that I was spending for it, allowed me to be in the area of geographic that I wanted, near family, etc., and allowed me to have the flexibility to still prioritize my family, etc., and then enjoy my job and my patients. So if you're particularly early in the journey, just remember that reflection will become stronger the further you go. When you're focused on finishing as early as possible and making the big bucks, etc., you don't want that to be at the cost of an outcome that you're not happy going to, because that's what leads to burnout, dissatisfaction in the career. And the further you go, you want to say, like, what outcome do I want? Like, what kind of job lifestyle do I want? What kind of job description do I want? What kind of patients do I want to take care of? How do I want to present myself as a day-to-day physician? How do I want to be available to my family and support system? Those are all the questions that continue to grow and adapt over time. But again, it becomes more focused on the outcome and less so how much time I have to spend. If I was really interested in EP, for example, that would have been 2 extra years of fellowship. But frankly, if like that's what the field of cardiology I would have been interested in, my wife would have been fully supportive to say, like, go do it. We'll figure it out, as we always do. And I would have done it because I knew that that would have been the outcome that would have been best for me and also for my family. But I'm thankfully not having to do 2 more years. I've found my outcome that I'm happy with now. But keep that in mind. The outcome matters more than the length of time you go through, because at the end of the day, you're going to be 32 or 35 or whatever years the discrepancy is going to be, and you rather be happy at that same phase versus doing it quicker but then being unhappy and like making some money. Number 2, discipline and consistency are the 2 most ingredients to success in this field. Hopefully you guys have seen this, especially if you follow the channel for a while, but the amount of opportunity, I was going to say luck, but the amount of opportunity I've been presented has been often a byproduct of just showing up and putting in constant work. And I know working with students, there's always this question of like, how do you stay motivated? And frankly, like I've gotten to get a point where I've like disliked that feeling of motivation and the concept of motivation, because frankly, even to this day, I am not motivated every day. There are weeks where I'm not motivated and in a slump, but that does not mean that I can't show up to do the work that's needed to get better. So discipline is necessary, motivation is not. Ideally, you have both, but keep in mind that like to get the outcome you want, the discipline is the muscle you have to continuously flex and often show up when you don't want to. And then consistently doing so over time. The same thing goes for your studying, the same thing goes for clinical improvement and research and CV building and just like getting better at patient care, patient rapport, procedures, whatever it may be, just presenting yourself. Those stack over time by small bits of steps, but you have to be consistent and you have to be disciplined to actually wanting those results. I am not the smartest person in the room ever. I am not the most experienced. I'm not the best critical thinker. There are tons of flaws in what I do, but I do have the most repetitions out of most people in the room that I'm with in terms of just putting the effort in of trying to become better. And I feel like that served me well, and I hope that you can use that as motivation to do, hope you can use that as insight, not motivation. We're gonna keep that word out of this video, but hopefully you can use that as more insight to keep yourself more disciplined and consistent throughout the process. And then finally, this is simple, but like really enjoy your life outside your job. I am about to turn 32, but my favorite parts of my last 15 years has been the house that we have, this like home that we're building, and this environment that we have with family nearby, and like the memories that we make and the photos that I have of my daughter who's about to turn 2 in a week, which is like insane. Like those are my favorite parts. The skills that I've developed outside of medicine, of singing, of playing the piano, of running, like run like multiple marathons now, which is like insane. Like my medals are up there. My wife was like, you have a lot of medals. And I was like, you know what? Like I have like done a decent amount of races over the past like 15 years. And like the skills that you develop outside of medicine really make you the interesting person. When you introduce yourself and like somebody asks you what you do and you're like, I'm a doctor, and sidebar, like I frankly don't even like to mention my profession because like I don't think it identifies me in the top 5 at all. It is a big part of what I am, but it's by no means the top 5 kind of things that I consider myself to be. But when that comes up, I would feel like for other people that becomes an identity, and it's good in a sense, but at the same point, you want to make sure that there's other elements of your life that truly shape and identify the flavors of you that make you you. Because again, your job may not go the way you want, but like my family's always going to be here for me. My daughter's always going to be cute and rambunctious and like fun to hang out with and like watch her grow. Our home is always going to be something worth investing in and like experiencing the growth that we have as a family. The family that we have around us is always going to be wonderful, and is, you know, it's limited and we have to enjoy that time that we have with them. And the skills that I build are always going to be some things that can continuously use for fun or to like help out in other aspects. That's what I've appreciated accidentally that I've fallen into. So if you're in the part of your journey, wherever you are, and you've just given 101% focus on just your medical journey, I do encourage you, for your own betterment, of just thinking of ways of how you can have the right balance outside. By no means does that mean everyone needs to get married or find a relationship on their medical journey before they graduate, etc. I was 25, 26 when I got married, 30 when I had a kid, 31 or something when I bought a home. And so yes, there's a little bit of a delayed aspect of starting a life, but the main aspect is make sure that you focus on those aspects outside of medicine, and then you will figure out what that means for you. But by no means is the 9 to 5, 7 to 7 the biggest priority in your life. The biggest priority, frankly, is how happy you are outside of your medical job. And ideally, that will allow you to show up to work and be as happy as possible. So unfortunately, I've seen it where an outside unhappy life leads to an unhappy inside life, and then just kind of cycles. And I really do wish you guys all the best, and that's probably the most important yet simplest piece of advice I can give anyone. So to end this episode with some excitement, let's talk about what I'm excited about going into third year, and also definitely to be an attending, particularly to be an attending. Number one, and this is full honesty, is the financial buffer for myself and family. I by no means am intending to buy a fancy car as soon as I become an attending. In fact, I'm going to let my Kia run to the ground until we are forced to buy a new car. But for the past 3 years, I have basically been working while my wife has been at home with our daughter and doing, frankly, the harder job of raising her. But running a house in, a metropolitan area on a fellow salary is challenging. And it's required moonlightings and other things that we talked about in this episode. If you're interested, I'll talk about how I do moonlighting as a fellow, running a business and trying to have some supplemental income to kind of come in and support those goals. But being attending allows us to have more of a buffer, and it allows me to basically take a deep breath myself, show up to work with a different aspect instead of focusing on making money, just taking care of patients. The money will come. And then I essentially have more buffer for myself and my family for the goals that we have in the future. Vacations, just being able to treat our daughters and our parents and our families to nicer things instead of just making sacrifices, because frankly, there's not anything in the budget. And also to have this financial buffer for my family where, if my wife or my daughter or my family needed something, the answer is never no anymore. If it's necessary, if it's meant for somebody's betterment, it's there. And we can also obviously save up for future goals that we both have together. Looking forward to that aspect, because aside from my hospitals here, haven't really experienced it. And so to not have to worry financially about income and really just show up to work and enjoy my experience with my patients and try to become a better doctor, come home and be happy, and the financial aspect just kind of figures itself out. As long as we control our expenses, I'm looking forward to that. Number two is control of my schedule. Finally, I will no longer, as of next year, have a month-to-month, this is where you need to be. Instead, and I just had a recent conversation with one of my attendings saying how do you schedule your week? Does somebody tell you when your patients are coming? How does that work? If you need to go off on a Friday because your daughter's going to do a ballet recital, what do you do? And he was very clear to me. He's if I need to block off my Friday afternoon, I just tell my assistant or nurse to do so, and I have no patients. And sometimes I take 3-day weekends. And it just depends on, obviously, the income model and how your job is structured. So some jobs will be RVU, which means you essentially make what you see or who you take care of or what procedures you do. So if you don't work, you don't get paid. But if you're okay with how much you've gotten paid and you don't want to work, then perfect. And other models don't necessarily allow that level of flexibility. But if that's kind of the model I ultimately end up in, to think that if I really wanted a Friday afternoon or a Monday morning where I wanted to spend time with my family or do a little bit of a longer trip and not have to rush back, I haven't had that flexibility. Somebody, even with my hospitalist time, this is what time you need to be at work. This is what time you get to go home. And as a fellow, it's the same thing. And so having more control of my schedule and being able to focus on my career and my family together and enhance those and work them as a hybrid, I'm looking forward to that. Number 3 is true growth via fire. So I know as an attending, your first year of attending life is supposed to be one of the most difficult parts of your training. Because now, one, everything is on you. You have all the liability. There's no attending above you that's sure, if you screw up, it's still under me and I'll supervise you. No, it's on you. So you have to be very thoughtful of all the decisions you make, and you can't rush things and you can't be careless. And I know that I will stumble through that aspect of getting better at patient care just by making decisions over and over again throughout the day. And I'm actually looking forward to that. That's where I feel I become the best version of myself, where I just grow through fire. And being uncomfortable is where I become the most comfortable over time. And that's truly my definition, that hard is just a standard that you set based off of what you've experienced. And I know hard is going to get harder. And that means you become even more capable once you experience a new level of hard. So I'm looking forward to that. And then finally, there's always this talk of like AI and medicine is going to take their jobs away. AI is going to change how I do cardiology, and then maybe in a future episode I'll talk about how. But I'm looking forward to having technology allow me to better take care of my patients. And that may mean that I do certain things differently, or I have to see more patients because technology is more efficient. We'll figure out a time what that looks like. But I'm looking forward to AI not having to force me to type my notes or to summarize a patient's kind of chart before I've seen them. And ideally just allows me more time with the patients, allows me more time to make critical decisions on imaging instead of having to like measure things and look at every single small piece of detail. AI would ideally be able to do those for me, and I would obviously double check them, but doing it faster allows me to say clinically this echo looks like this CT looks like this, and looking for the right things on the right patients. And so I'm looking forward to having this kind of growth and marriage between technology and cardiology, particularly for me to better be able to take care of my patients. And the frank answer is I have no idea what my career is going to look like in 10 to 20 years, even at baseline, but the speed at which technology is now being integrated into all systems, including healthcare, just allows me to understand that I frankly can't expect to predict what it's going to look like in 15 years, but I am excited about that integration, what that means for how doctors can take care of patients. And being somebody who's very efficient-minded, ideally it takes away all the BS things, or most of the BS things that you end up doing that is not patient care. But that, guys, is a big summary of everything going into my third year all the way up to being an attending. I feel like making my first video as a second-year med student to now being at this point where I feel like most people just don't last this long on YouTube or on podcasts or social platforms. So any of you guys that have stuck around to kind of stumble along with me on my journey, like, I appreciate you. Let me know in the comment section if you have been a long time follower, how, like, what's the first video you watched or how long you've kind of known my journey, because I think it allows me to reflect back where I was. And I've just been hopeful all the time that I make these episodes that I truly can leave a journal to use for myself, but frankly for you to be like, I'm going to avoid that mistake that he made, or I'm going to at least take advantage of that success that he had and ideally capitalize on it even more. I'm looking forward to hearing about y'all's success on your journey. I'm really excited to experience this last bit of formal training that I have left in me. I will not take it for granted. I'm trying to avoid the senioritis aspect. Like, this is it. There's no more training or purposeful time dedicated just for me to become a better cardiologist or doctor. Like, I have to take the most advantage of this and can't waste time. I want to be the best doctor on day one I can be, because then it's only up from there, ideally. More update videos like this coming. If you guys do enjoy them, let me know in the comment section down below. Hit that like, subscribe, etc. All the links will be added down below in the description, including the free ones in case you're interested in some free resources for your medical journey. And then lastly, always, if you enjoyed this video right here will talk about my experience kind of day to day as a life as a cardiology fellow. Pretty much it. Thank you, as always, for being a part of my journey. I hope I was a little help to you guys on yours. I'll catch you guys in the next one. Peace.